Warm greetings from the High 10. It's Everyday Shenanigans, and thanks for joining me. This is a double live pertaining to a crime that took place a few years ago, um, and now a change has occurred in the case. A California woman by the name of Sherri Papini faked a kidnapping, and now years later, she's being charged with faking her own kidnapping, and this is a part of the crime vault. Another story I will bring you is coming out of Florida. A woman went missing recently and was later found in her own septic tank. I'm tying the two stories together because they are similar. Both women were missing. No one knew exactly what had happened to the said women. The first story in my crime vault is a older crime that took place, as I said, a couple of years ago. And now the lady, is being tried for faking her kidnapping, Sherri Papini. And in my second content is pertaining to a woman out of Florida who went missing. But unfortunately for her, she really was missing and later found dead in her septic tank. Someone she knew, an acquaintance, a handyman, killed her and put her there. The reason I'm tying these two stories together is because they are similar. In one story, you have a woman seeking attention, sick, demented in the head, a Mad Hatter, faking her own kidnapping, and years later, the state bringing charges against her for the said fake kidnapping. And in my current story, a woman actually goes missing. And unfortunately, someone got her missing, someone that she knew. So I'm going to tie them together parallel to show you how you never know that what you're hearing and seeing is the truth. And I've said this many times in my lives, that you don't know people. You don't really know if the person who's a victim is actually a victim, if the suspect is actually a suspect, if the missing is actually missing, and if a person is actually deceased. I will bring you that said commentary. Welcome to the vault, story number 1. Thank you for joining me. But before I start, I did not bring you a movie of the week last week, and I'd like to bring you 3 movies to compensate for not bringing forth any great picture shows for you all to watch because I got sidetracked with the said stories from last week. So my apologies. If you need any verification for the storylines, trailers, please go to my community page. I post all movies there for you all to watch. But from now on, I will mention them in the lives for those who do not travel over to the community page. This is my movie I watched today. I finished. It is a very, very good movie filmed in the bayou down in Louisiana. It is called The Long Shadow, released 2020. It's about an African-American cop who is wrangling with trying to better her circumstances and get out of her small town as a sheriff deputy onto a better existence. She also has an acquaintance that is a friend of hers, and she is working with their city government on some land deals. And I'm not going to go any further because I don't want to spoil the storyline, but it is a mystery. It is a very, very good movie. So please go into the YouTube queue for the said movie. It's called The Long Shadow. I watched it on Showtime. Thank you so much for joining me. This is Everyday Shenanigans. Now for movie number 2. Thank you all so much for joining me. Movie number 2 is called No Witness. It is a crime drama pertaining to a crime that took place many years ago, and a man believes that his family was wronged, and he is now taking revenge out on the said gentleman. No Witnesses, release 2021. That is movie number 2. And movie number 3, which I finished last night. Wow, what a movie. Paradise Cove. Also, in the Showtime queue, let me tell you, I will do a video on this movie because it is a very sick and diabolical storyline that is something that happens every day, which is called squatting, for those of you who know what the word means. Squatting is people who go into other people's properties, their homes, and take over their house and or pretend to be them and refuse to leave. In some states, it is a civil matter, so you cannot call the police to have the person removed from the house. You'll have to go take them to court. Paradise Cove is squatting times 20. It is the most bizarre, wicked story I've seen thus far on TV. It is worth every minute. Paradise Cove, released 2021, starring Mena Suvari. Many of you probably know her. She's been in a lot of movies. It is a very, very good movie, and I highly recommend it. So there is Paradise Cove. It is a mystery drama. No witnesses, also drama. And then there is The Long Shadow, a mystery. And it's also in the Showtime queue. Those are 3 movies I recommend for your enjoyment. Please go to my community page for the said movies. Thank you all for joining me. This is Everyday Shenanigans. I will now get started with my commentary. Crime Vault story this evening is about Sherri Papini, a Caucasian female out of the state of California who put on the biggest hoax that she probably has ever put on in her entire life. She faked her own kidnapping, and she's now facing charges for that said crime. People thought she was missing. She was also a married woman, but she was not missing. Let me bring you some information on mental disorders to tie into who this woman is and why she faked her own kidnapping. Thank you for joining me. Just bear with me here. So I have a lot of information to bring you all pertaining to these stories. I read briefly in an article that she told someone she knew that she had a heart disease. I'm sure when I read the said commentary, there will probably be other things in there that she has lied about to said people. But I'm going to read you one thing I could find on people who fake illnesses, and that is Munchausen syndrome. And I'm sure many of you have heard of that. I do not know if she's being diagnosed with this disorder, but I'm using this disorder as an example if indeed she was telling people that she was sickly at one time before her kidnapping. Thank you for joining. Munchausen syndrome. Munchausen syndrome is a rare type of mental disorder where a patient fakes illness to gain attention and sympathy. It's hard to diagnose because many other conditions need to be ruled out first. Treatment aims to manage rather than cure the condition, but is rarely successful. Munchausen syndrome by proxy, MBP, is the old term for a form of abuse where a person either fakes or produces symptoms in someone else, usually their child. This is now called fabricated or induced illness by carers. FIIC, and is different to Munchausen syndrome. Munchausen syndrome, also known as factitious disorder, is a rare type of mental disorder in which a person fakes illness. The person may lie about symptoms, make themselves appear sick, or make themselves purposely unwell. This type of mental disorder is most often seen in young adults and is considered a type of self-harm. A person with Munchausen syndrome can be very convincing, which can result in doctors providing unnecessary treatment, such as medication or surgery. A person with Munchausen syndrome doesn't pretend to be ill for a personal gain, such as prescription medications or money. Instead, the person is driven to behave the way they do for complex psychological reasons, including a strong desire for attention and sympathy. Often, people with Munchausen syndrome have experienced childhood trauma. These are the symptoms of Munchausen syndrome. A person with Munchausen syndrome gains intense satisfaction from the attention associated with playing the ill patient. Signs and symptoms that may suggest Munchausen syndrome include a spectacular medical history that includes many tests, medical procedures, operations, an odd collection of seemingly unrelated symptoms, a lack of conclusive results despite intense medical investigations, new symptoms that appear after medical tests prove negative, intensive extensive medical knowledge of many different illnesses, frequently visiting many different doctors, sometimes in other states or territories, frequent presentation at emergency departments, usually at different hospitals, requests for invasive medical procedures or surgeries, failure to improve despite medical treatment, including relapsing for unknown reasons. Common presentations of Munchausen syndrome. A person with Munchausen syndrome may convince doctors in many ways. For example, they may pretend to be in pain, exaggerate symptoms, fake symptoms, including psychological symptoms, poison themselves with chemicals, infect themselves with unclean substances, tamper with diagnostic tests, for example, contaminate a urine sample with sugar or blood, interfere with a medical condition so that recovery isn't possible, for example, repeatedly open or contaminate a skin wound, or not take prescribed medication, ignore a genuine medical problem until it becomes serious. Common complications of Munchausen syndrome. Side effects from prescription medicines, including overdose, complications from poisoning or self-harm practices, complications from medical procedures or surgeries, death from self-harm, or complications of medical intervention. Risk factors for Munchausen syndrome. Chronic illness during childhood. The person may have received a lot of attention because of their illness. Chronic illness of a significant family member when the person was a child. Self-esteem or identity problems. Relationship problems. Difficulty distinguishing reality from fantasy. Ability to lie and manipulate. A history of mental problems such as depression, hallucinations, post-traumatic stress disorder, the need to blame personal failures on external factors such as illness. Diagnosis. Diagnosis is difficult because a range of legitimate physical and mental illnesses must be ruled out first. To complicate matters further, a person with Munchausen syndrome tends to seek help from various healthcare providers to avoid tipping off any one doctor. Diagnosis, if it happens at all, may depend on abstract concepts such as the person's symptoms don't make sense when compared with the test results. The person is unusually eager to undergo invasive medical procedures and operations. The person doesn't respond to treatments in a predictable fashion. Other people in the patient's life don't confirm the person's symptoms. Treatment for Munchausen syndrome. Medications to treat associated mental health illnesses such as depression, anxiety. Unfortunately, a person with Munchausen syndrome may misuse prescription drugs to provoke symptoms for further medical intervention. Cognitive behavior therapy, CBT, may help to change the person's beliefs and actions. However, it is unlikely that someone with Munchausen syndrome would admit to falsifying symptoms, which can make progress difficult. Some people with Munchausen syndrome flatly refuse psychiatric help. Avoid unnecessary tests and surgeries is important to reduce the risk of complications. This can be aided by encouraging the person to go to only one primary care doctor. However, a person with Munchausen syndrome is likely to move on to other doctors and start again. Munchausen syndrome by proxy. This is MVP. Munchausen syndrome by proxy was the term previously used for a rare but serious form of abuse where a person either fakes or produces symptoms in someone else, usually their child. In Australia, MBP is known as fabricated or induced illness by carers, FIIC, to distinguish it from Munchausen syndrome. In Australia, FIIC is considered child or victim abuse rather than a mental health condition. And I'm going to stop there. This is by betterhealth.vic.gov.au. I mention this because perhaps this woman may have this disorder. I'm not for sure. I just read briefly where she did tell someone she had a heart disease, and it is believed that she does not. But I will bring you further commentary pertaining to this storyline. This is my first story for the Crime Vault. Sherri Papini. Thank you for joining me. This is an updated story. Sherri Papini accused of fabricating California kidnapping, lying to FBI agents. This was just uploaded a few days ago. Sherri Papini, the Reading woman whose alleged kidnapping in November 2016 sparked national searches and tabloid media coverage, was arrested Thursday and charged with wire fraud and lying to federal agents about the abduction, the U.S. Attorney's Office in Sacramento announced. Papini, the 39-year-old mother, too, was described in the media at the time of her disappearance as a super mom and became a true crime celebrity. Is accused of lying to authorities in an August 2020 interview about her disappearance, despite being warned in advance that it was a crime to lie to agents. She was presented with evidence that showed she had not been abducted, U.S. Attorney Phil Talbert's office said in a statement. Instead of retracting her kidnapping story, Papini continued to make false statements about her purported abductors. Instead of being kidnapped, federal officials say Papini actually was staying with the former boyfriend in Costa Mesa, who was identified in court papers only as ex-boyfriend. The Papini saga led to weeks of searching for her nationwide and rallies of support for her and her family in Shasta County. Her husband first reported her missing on November 2nd, 2016 at 5:50 p.m. after he returned home and could not find her or their two children, court documents say. The husband, Keith, eventually discovered the children had been left at daycare, and after tracking her phone through a Find My iPhone app, he found the device near Sunrise Drive in Redding, court documents say. She resurfaced on Thanksgiving morning near Woodland, 146 miles from her disappearance, with a chain around her waist and one arm, as well as other bindings, court documents say. She appeared to have lost a considerable amount of weight, and her long blonde hair had been cut much shorter. She had been branded on her right shoulder, although the exact content of the brand was indistinguishable. The details of what was seared in her skin were never released. In an interview with the Sacramento Bee in 2017, a detective said it contained obscure letters and that Papini allowed detectives to use alternate light sources and filters to try to make out what the markings are. Papini's nose was swollen. She had bruises on her face, rashes on her left arm, left upper inner thigh, as well as other parts of her body, ligature marks on her wrists, ankles, burns on her left forearm, bruising on her pelvis and the front of both legs, court documents say. Papini told authorities 2 Hispanic women had abducted her, and she was taken to a Woodland hospital where her clothing was inspected and mixtures of DNA consistent with Papini and one male contributor who was not her husband were recovered, court documents say. That DNA was entered into the state's database and routinely searched until 2020, when investigators got a hit that led them to the ex-boyfriend, court papers say. Doubts about Papini's story. Papini's sister, Sheila Coister, declined to comment Thursday, and a message left at the family's home was not returned. Other family members also didn't return calls. Late Thursday, Papini's family released a statement through a public relations firm that in part said, "We love Sherri and are appalled by the way in which law enforcement ambushed her this afternoon in a dramatic and unnecessary manner in front of her children. Sherri and Keith have cooperated with law enforcement's requests despite repeated attempts to unnecessarily pit them against each other, empty threats to publicly embarrass them, and other conduct that was less than professional," the statement from the intrepid firm said on behalf of the family. Detectives revealed in 2017 that in the days leading up to her disappearance, Sherri Papini exchanged text messages with a Michigan man whom she had planned to meet, and there were other doubts surrounding her story, some of them stretching back years. 13 years before Papini told Shasta County detectives she was abducted and tortured for weeks by 2 female kidnappers, her mother called deputies to ask for help with her daughter. Papini, her mother, alleged, had been harming herself and blaming the injuries on her. Loretta Grape's allegations were detailed in a 2003 December Shasta County Sheriff's Office incident report. The Bee received under the California's Public Records Act after Papini's alleged abduction. The report was only 2 sentences long. It doesn't say whether the department found evidence that Papini, then 21 years old, had in fact harmed herself. Grape didn't return a voice message Thursday afternoon. Online sleuths also found other evidence to cast doubts on Papini's claims. They dug up a racist online post that fueled skepticism about Papini's story since it was similar to her claims. An essay posted on a now defunct website, skinheads.com, was signed by a Sherri Graff, Papini's maiden name. The writer said that while growing up in Shasta County, she got into 2 fights with Latinos who targeted her because she was drug-free, white, and proud of her blood and heritage. The essay portrays the writer as a fierce fighter who inflicted damage. It took 3 full-size men to pull me off of her, the post reads. I broke her nose and split her eyebrow. Authorities said it wasn't clear whether she wrote the post. Papini's friends and family have said the post was written by someone else. Court documents say that in interviews with investigators, Papini gave details of her alleged kidnapping and of being chained to a pole in a closet in a room where the windows were boarded up. They would play music loudly, she told investigators, according to court documents, that really annoying Mexican music. And they would watch TV there. They would watch TV. There was a fireplace. I could smell it. I could hear that sound. You know, when you move the handle to open the fireplace, it made like a creaky sound. And it was cold. It was always cold. And it seemed like it rained almost every night. She also described being fed only once a day, getting rice or tortillas or sometimes apples, the documents say, and claimed she was branded after trying to escape. In 2017, Shasta County Sheriff Sergeant Brian Jackson told the Bee in an interview that Papini, who weighed around 100 pounds when she claimed to have been abducted, told of fighting back against the younger of her captors, slamming the woman's head into a toilet when she was allowed to leave the room where she was being held in order to take a shower. Investigators continued pursuing the case until March 2020, when a DNA hit led them to an ex-boyfriend who shared an America Online account with her and was briefly associated with an address owned by Papini's parents, the documents say. FBI agents went to the ex-boyfriend's home on June 9, 2020, and collected items from his trash, including an Honest Honey green tea bottle that was analyzed and found to have DNA that matched the collected from Papini's clothing, court documents say. Okay. That garbage collection is essentially the same technique investigators used to confirm the identities of the Golden State Killer Joseph James DeAngelo and NorCal rapist Roy Charles Waller. In August of 2020, investigators contacted the ex and he admitted to investigators that he helped Papini run away, court documents say. Court documents say the ex-boyfriend had known Papini since they were 13 or 14 years old and had once been engaged. Ex-boyfriend told investigators that Papini reached out to him out of the blue and that they had not spoken in a long time because she got married. She had kids, court documents say. Ex-boyfriend estimated that sometime in 2015, he was cleaning his house and came across a box of old photos and personal items that belonged to Papini from when they were in a relationship together. He sent the items to her parents, and she later called him to say she had been saving her money because she had a plan to run away with him, court papers say. Papini told him that her husband was beating and raping her, and she was trying to escape, the documents say. Papini told ex-boyfriend that she had filed police reports, but the police were not doing anything to stop her husband's abuse. Court documents noted that Shasta County Sheriff's officials have no reports of Papini making allegations against her husband. The documents also note that investigators spoke with others who said that Papini made other unfounded abuse claims. The ex-boyfriend told investigators Papini cut her hair short while she was with him and hit and burned herself to cause injuries, and that she asked him to brand her, court papers say. Oh, mercy. What a mess. Return to Redding. Finally, just before Thanksgiving 2016, she told him she missed her children and asked to be taken back to Redding. He said he drove 7 hours and dropped her off on a country road off the freeway, the documents say. The FBI and Shasta County Sheriff's officials confronted Papini in an interview August 13, 2020, with her husband present. Investigators explained that phone records and DNA evidence showed that Papini had been in contact with ex-boyfriend and again told Papini lying to federal agents is a crime, court papers say. Investigators explained that ex-boyfriend provided details no one else would know. While husband was still in the interview room, Papini continued to deny that she ran away with ex-boyfriend. Once husband left the room, Papini admitted that she and ex-boyfriend did talk a little bit before and said, When I went out of town for work, I talked with other guys. I made a mistake and I talked to other men, and I shouldn't have. The documents add that Papini did not at any point throughout the interview disavow her repeated statements that 2 Hispanic women kidnapped her, nor did she ever admit that ex-boyfriend had picked her up and that she had resided at ex-boyfriend's home during the period she was reported missing. A GoFundMe account opened after her disappearance raised more than $49,000. And court documents say Papini and her husband used some of the funds to pay off her credit cards. The documents also say she applied for and received more than $30,000 from the California Victims Compensation Board for her ordeal, which led to the mail fraud charge. Among the items for which she was compensated, therapy sessions for PTSD from the kidnap, ambulance services, and $1,000 for her to buy window blinds for her home, court filings say. If convicted, Papini could face up to 20 years and fines of up to $500,000. Papini made her first court appearance on Friday afternoon and was ordered to remain in jail through at least Tuesday. In court documents, investigators described several people from Papini's past describing her as a habitual liar. One man who knew her when she was younger described her as an attention-hungry person who told stories to try to get people's attention. Sean Davari, one of Papini's ex-boyfriends from the early 2000s, wasn't contacted by the FBI, but he told the Bee on Thursday that his ex was a serial liar who would routinely make up bizarre claims, sometimes for no apparent reason. She lied about surfing and just all kinds of crazy lies, he said. Clayton Traylor, whose family for a time let Papini live with them in Danville around 2004, said as soon as he got word of Papini's arrest, he spent Thursday reading through the indictment. He said the stories the witnesses alleged told the agents about her lying match what he remembers. He said Papini used to claim to have a heart condition, which his friends later learned was a lie. And anytime someone else, especially other women, were getting attention in a way that was taken away from her, she would have these episodes to kind of draw everything back to her, he said. When she disappeared, Davari told his friends not to worry, he said. I told everybody, I was like, dude, I will bet you everything with this girl. It's fine, bro, he said. I promise you. That is the sad information. Woo, it's a bit winded. So we have a woman who obviously had issues as a child. And I have also mentioned this in my commentary pertaining to pathological liars, people who lie easily, such as the crimes you have seen as of late with the boys out west, Rogersville, with Summer Wells. It is easy for a person to lie. They're 30, 40 years old, and then they keep spinning the lie. The one thing we've learned from pathological liars is that they have been lying a very long time. They didn't just wake up at 40, 50 and started lying. As you've heard here, one of the friends, guys who dated her, said she lied as a child. She always lied, made up stuff. And I do know of someone like that from school myself. High school, I had a white friend. He was a very feminine young man. He would make up the wildest stories, just stuff, like Scott Peterson. Oh, I went to Paris. And I thought to myself, you didn't go to Paris. And I eventually told him, I know you didn't go to Paris. You don't have to lie to be friends with me or anybody. We'll accept you just the way you are. But I realized this person is similar to this person, always wanting attention, wanted to be more than what he was, couldn't accept the lifestyle that he had, which I don't think he probably had a bad lifestyle. Hell, he had a car at 16 years of age in high school. So it's like, what are you unhappy about? What are you miserable about? And that's where this comes from, this sinking, miserable feeling of not feeling worthy, validated. So they start spinning the wildest of stories, where they've been, what they did, who they talked to, famous people they know. I mean, it just goes on and on. Sherri Papini is my story from the crime vault. As you see, they got money from the California Victims Compensation, which is very strange. I don't know why they would have an organization that would give random people money. I can see if a person was destitute and didn't have anything, but it's just very interesting that they would give her money. She also took money from GoFundMe to pay off credit card bills, she and her husband, which is crazy as all get out. I'm going to give you brief commentary pertaining to that, of the husband paying off some bills. These people were wicked. Just like, you can't make this stuff up. Thank you for joining me. If you want to donate to the channel, $BigAngie, 129 Cash App, all super chat to welcome during the live. Thank you all so much for joining me. Okay. I'm going to give you a brief information about the monies that was taken fraudulently from the public. This is by the New York Post. Sherri Papini husband allegedly paid off credit cards with $49,000 donated to kidnapping hoax. Sherri Papini's once sympathetic tale grows more loathsome with each passing day. The California supermom didn't just fake her own abduction. Papini and her husband Keith also allegedly used nearly $50,000 donated toward the effort to find her to pay off their credit cards instead, according to authorities. Papini was arrested Thursday on charges she staged her own 2016 kidnapping, a shocking 3-week disappearance that generated international headlines and an outpouring of public support. Federal prosecutors in California also claim in court papers Papini sued $49,070 donated through the Bring Sherri Home Safe GoFundMe page toward credit card debt and other personal expenses. It appears her husband Keith and an unnamed ex-boyfriend were at least aware of her ruse. Thank you all so much for your donations, Keith Papini wrote on the GoFundMe page, November 7, 2016, 5 days after he reported her missing. Your generosity, concern, and prayers are very much appreciated by the Papini family. Just 1 month later, on December 6th, he wrote a $31,818 check, 13 cents, check to himself from the GoFundMe account, prosecutors allege, much of which was used to pay down credit card debt. The rest of the donated funds were put in the couple's bank accounts and spent on personal expenses. You also will see a picture of Sherri and Keith, decent-looking couple. She used $49,000.70 from a GoFundMe to pay off the credit card bills. And let me make everyone aware that on December 6th, this is 1 month after she went missing, a $31,000 check, $818, was a personal check from that GoFundMe, was written to Mr. Keith himself. It's a very baffling story. This is a 2016 incident that has now come to fruition. And the sick part is that she accused 2 Hispanic women of kidnapping her. Naturally, she spun the story to detectives of what her life was like with these said Hispanic women. And naturally, you can cause a race war when you're accusing other races of crimes against you. The most infamous case known to man of implicating a black man in a kidnapping and carjacking is that of Susan Smith, a South Carolina female who accused a black man of kidnapping her 2 children, carjacking her, when we later find out there was no black man, there was no hijacking, carjacking. We later find her children submerged in water in a car that she drove down an embankment and got out of to let her children die. And God forbid had the community went haywire from that accusation and lie of pinning it on a black man. You have some very sinister people. Now, who knows if she had any issues with Hispanics during high school for her to spin this web years later, but it doesn't really matter. Just because you have an issue with a black person or white person doesn't give you a right to go out here and make up crimes and implicate a black man or a white person or a Jew, because you could get somebody penitentiary time and are killed from the lie. This is a very sinister woman. And the sick part about her is, 1, she's married. 2, she has children. So that means she's somebody's mother. And God forbid, they carry the gene pool into adulthood and they start to lie and make up malicious things like their mother. Sadly enough, we do carry our parents' DNA and we do carry some of their ways with us in life. And that is the sad part about life, is that the things that you loathe as a child, you sometimes emulate into adulthood. Your mother had PTSD. Next thing you know, you've got PTSD. Your father had nervous tics, was an alcoholic, drunk, drug addict. Now you have nervous tics, drug addict, alcoholic. It's not that you wanted that for yourself, but it's in the DNA. But if you get help, you don't have to be like your parents. Just a little tidbit of information. All right, everybody. That's by the New York Post about them taking personal money. I'm going to give you some information also about her friends, and then I'm going to play some audio from the YouTube queue pertaining to this case. Thank you for joining me. Let's go here. I'm going to read you something brief about people who lie and pin crimes on other races. ABC News is a source. Because they can get away with it, why African Americans are blamed for crimes they didn't commit, experts. African Americans make up 49% of wrongful convictions since 1989. A panicked white woman in New York Central Park calls 911 to say that a black man threatened her and her dog. A Florida mom claims 2 black men abducted her son, who had autism and was later found dead. But the harrowing story from Manhattan was just that, a tall tale about a potential assailant, but a bird watcher. And the supposedly terrified mother, police say, was never confronted by 2 abductors, but instead has been charged with killing her son. Both the phony 911 call and the alleged kidnapping story follow, experts say. The stereotypical notion of black men as criminals and the ingrained racism that has existed in American society for generations. Although some may find it shocking that people are still resorting to those tropes, experts say that a culture of relative impunity has allowed it. It's because they can get away with it. They do it because the criminal justice system is not going to give them consequences, says Gloria Brown Marshall, professor at John Jay College of Criminal Justice. Patricia Ripley, the Florida mom, was charged with first-degree premeditated murder on May 23rd after Miami, Florida police say that in her initial report, her son, who was nonverbal, was abducted by 2 black men during a carjacking was a farce. During the manhunt for the 2 vaguely described alleged abductors, police say they found surveillance video that allegedly showed 45-year-old Ripley attempted to drown her son in a canal. Police say neighbors heard screams and rescued the boy, but an hour later, Ripley allegedly drowned the child in another canal, police said. Ripley is expected to be arraigned on June 12th, and it was not clear if she had an attorney. We don't agree about what they said about my wife, said Aldo Ripley, the father of Alejandro Ripley, after Patricia Ripley's bond hearing on May 23rd. And inside of this article, you will see a photograph of Patricia Ripley, a Caucasian woman, and Susan Smith from a 1994 photo file. The allegations surrounding Ripley were reminiscent of Susan Smith's October 1994 story to South Carolina police that her 2 sons, aged 1 and 3, were kidnapped by African Americans during a carjacking. Smith, now 48, serving 30 years to life in prison of a prison sentence, confessed that she actually let her car roll into a lake with the boys inside, drowning them. Smith, a white woman, and Ripley, who described herself in a police report as a white Hispanic, were not charged with filing a false police report. In the second recent incident, Amy Cooper was seen on a now viral cell phone video on May 26, frantically telling a 911 operator that an African-American man recording her, Christian Cooper, was threatening her life after asking her to put her dog on a leash. She earlier told him on camera that she would do exactly that. Dogs are permitted off leash during certain hours, but not in the section of Central Park they were in. Amy Cooper has since been fired from her investment firm job and apologized for her actions, saying, "I am not a racist." The New York City Commission on Human Rights launched an investigation into the incident. Inside of this article, you will see a picture of Amy Cooper with her dog May 25th, 2020 in Central Park. Tim Wise, an anti-racism activist and author of the 2004 book, White Like Me, Reflection on Race from a Privileged Son, compared Amy Cooper's actions to a white woman in the antebellum South, lying about a black man raping her and then maybe getting exposed. Wise said, the woman's thoughts would likely be, "Oh, my life is ruined now. Everybody's going to think I'm a liar." Instead, she should have been thinking about the potentially dire consequences of her claims. Wise said, "Yes, I do agree with that." "Gee, maybe you shouldn't have tried to get this man killed," he said. Nearly 3,500 black people were lynched in the United States from 1882 to 1968, according to the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. Brown Marshall maintained that white people jumped to blaming African Americans, especially African American men, for crimes in some cases because they don't want to believe they themselves are the boogeyman. They do it because in their minds, they are the victims. No matter what they have done to every group of color, they still see themselves as victims, said Brown Marshall. That brother, Chris Cooper, could have been killed based on that white woman's lies. How many black people generally, and black men in particular, have been murdered on the lie of a white woman? In an infamous case from 1955, 14-year-old Emmett Till was beaten and lynched after a white woman falsely accused him of touching and whistling at her. The woman admitted she lied about the incident in 2017. 6 years prior to Till's murder, 4 African-American men were falsely accused of raping a 17-year-old white woman in Florida, labeled the Groveland Four. 3 were arrested and several beaten as the 4th escaped. The 4th man was later found by a mob, which shot him to death. The accuser maintained she was telling the truth, but the men were pardoned. 2019. Falsely reporting African Americans for crimes has happened on a number of other occasions and is not exclusive to white women. In 1989, Charles Stewart reported to police that his pregnant wife was shot to death by an African American man during a carjacking in a predominantly African American community in Boston. He then pointed out an innocent African American man in a police lineup. It wasn't until Stewart's brother told police that he helped with the murder in an alleged insurance fraud scheme that the truth surfaced. Stewart died by suicide the following year. In 1992, Jesse Anderson falsely reported that 2 African American men attacked him and his wife in Milwaukee. His wife was stabbed dozens of times to death. Anderson went as far as to give police a hat that one of the alleged assailants were wearing. The investigation found that Anderson bought the hat and the knife used to kill his wife. He was convicted of her murder and in 1994 died after a prison beating. Sherri Hall, the Georgia rookie police officer, falsely claimed in 2016 that an African-American man shot her. According to the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, Hall described the assailant, 6 foot, 230-pound African-American man wearing a green shirt, black jogging pants. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation got involved and found her story to be a lie. She was charged, convicted, sentenced to 15 years in prison on a range of charges, including making false statements. Chuck Wessler, executive director of the Police Executive Research Forum and former Boston police officer, told ABC News on Friday he remembers the Stewart investigation as a nightmare. With a serious crime like that, police have to believe the victim, but they also have to check the information, said Wexler, who did not work on the Stewart case. What it did was create racial issues in the city. Police stopped a number of African-American men, and police got criticized for racial profiling. The man who Stewart identified in the lineup, Willie Bennett, stood accused of the crime until Stewart's brother came forward. Bennett spent 12 years in prison on an unrelated robbery charge. Okay. It goes on a little bit more, but ABC News is the source if you need. I brought you those references because this white woman accused 2 Hispanic women of kidnapping her. And it has been known that many black people have been accused of crimes that they did not commit, and possibly more Hispanics as well, and other nationalities that are non-white. Because as they said in this article, just easier to put it on that guy, the darker lady. People would tend to believe it. Who's going to believe me as a white woman or man as a liar in a crime exacted against me? And we're going to still have people to commit these atrocious crimes and blame other races for crimes that they indeed committed themselves, set up themselves. And think about this one man who was already in prison. He could die in there had this brother not come forward to tell the truth that he helped aid in the murdering of this wife, sister-in-law. See, you don't know people. People are crazy. Thank you for joining me this Everyday Shenanigans. I'm not going to bring you information from the Friends pertaining to, I think I've got everything I wanted to bring out. This is about the private investigator that helped look for Miss Papini. Then I will play the audio. People Magazine is the source. Private investigator who looked for Sherri Papini speaks out about her arrest. I've been hoaxed. The case of Sherri Papini has taken a dramatic turn, and those close to the Redding, California mom are now left searching for the truth. Papini was originally reported missing November 2nd, 2016, after she was last seen going for a jog. She was found 22 days later on Thanksgiving day when a motorist discovered her on the side of the road in Yolo County, about 150 miles south of her home. Papini told law enforcement she was abducted and held at gunpoint by two Hispanic women, of which she provided details to an FBI sketch artist. But the Department of Justice has suspicions about the case and now believe that Papini fabricated the story and was allegedly staying with the former boyfriend in the Southern California town of Costa Mesa, even going so far as to harm herself to support the claims. She faces a maximum sentence of 5 years in prison, $250,000 fine if convicted of making false statements to a federal officer, as well as 20 years and $250,000 for mail fraud. She has not yet entered a plea. While Papini was missing, the family hired private investigator Bill Garcia to help find her. Now, most of you know of Bill Garcia. His name has been mentioned with the Cal City Boys storyline. He also vacated the story, the investigation of searching for the Cal City Boys. There were various rumors that circulated to him being strong-armed verbally to get out of the case. I don't really know what's the truth or not pertaining to that, Mr. Bill. But now you hear that Bill also was hired to find this crazy nut here who wasn't missing. She was with her ex-boyfriend. Okay. Mr. Garcia says he has suspicions about her story. Well, it's definitely surprising news, Garcia says. I mean, there was always a little bit of a hint of something awry. Garcia's first indicator of doubt, a pair of headphones that were found near where Papini allegedly vanished. While some of her hair was on the headphones to indicate a struggle, the cord had been neatly wrapped up before the headphones were discarded. Typically, if someone's taken against their will, you're not going to find an item like the headphone cord tightly wound and sitting on top of a tuft of grass, Garcia says. Usually they may be broken, they may be absent, some sort of a struggle possibly. So for them to have been found the way they were, where they were found, was interesting to me, he says. And we never really forgot about that and kind of carried that into the back of our mind as we conducted our search. Now that Papini has been arrested, Garcia is asking why she might have made up such a dramatic story. I'm sure she did it for a reason, which we may not ever know what that reason was, he says. Did she feel that she wasn't getting enough attention from her family and husband and friends? Was she seeking attention? Had somebody made her upset? Garcia is most disturbed about who Papini allegedly blamed for her kidnapping. I think the part that makes me most upset is she implicated two Hispanic women, Garcia says, adding that he has received several calls about innocent Hispanic women who tipsters suspected were kidnappers. To me, that's probably what was the most painful. As Garcia pieces together what happened, he thinks about the time he volunteered to find Papini. Because she was a mother of two small children, I felt I needed to volunteer, he says. But now he can't shake the feeling that he's been duped. This is the first time I've been host in 30 years. PeopleMagazine.com is the source. Thank you all so much for joining me. Now we will go to Court TV pertaining to this baffling story. Thank you so much. I take it that she did want attention, and that is why she exacted this crime. Very, very sick crime. But in the end, somebody could have gotten hurt, arrested, and had to fight for their life in jail and prison to get out off a lie. And many people have gone to prison, brown-skinned people, for people who have lied on them, Caucasian people, in alleged crimes that didn't take place and or took place, but they were not the perpetrator. It's jacked up. Very jacked up. Woo, thank you all for joining me. Let's see. I want to make sure I get all this information out to you guys. Thank you all so much. Following the content. Thank you all. Thank you all. Just making sure I've got the right information to bring you all. Because I've got so many stories lined up. Ooh, mercy. Okay, here we go. One second, please.
Made national headlines in 2016 when she disappeared for 3 weeks, then turned up battered and branded, claiming she'd been abducted by 2 Hispanic women. Now she's behind bars, charged with faking the kidnapping. We're going to speak live with the sheriff in charge of the case after this report from Kaylee Hartung in Los Angeles. Good morning, Kaylee.
Good morning, George. The Papini family tells us they're confused by several aspects of the charges that Sherri now faces, and they hope to get clarification. But the 55-page criminal complaint filed here, it documents how detectives use DNA evidence, cell phone data, and testimony from Sherri Papini's ex-boyfriend to uncover the truth. Accused of faking her own kidnapping, this morning Sherri Papini is in jail. The 39-year-old detained, authorities calling her a danger and a flight risk ahead of her upcoming court appearance on Tuesday. A spokesperson for her family claiming she was ambushed in front of her 2 children when federal authorities arrested her at their Northern California home last week. A more than 5-year investigation unraveling what authorities describe as an elaborate web of lies. Papini seemingly disappeared in November of 2016, reappearing 3 weeks later, badly injured, claiming she was abducted by 2 Hispanic women and physically and emotionally tortured, beaten, and drugged. Her husband, Keith, speaking exclusively to ABC News just days after they were reunited at the hospital.
One of the officers kind of braced me and kind of put his arm around me, and he said, prepare yourself. She's alive, and you just got to be happy. They branded her. And her poor face, I got nauseated just looking at her. It's so hard for me to see her like that. And bruises were just intense.
That's the husband speaking.
From, being hit and kicked and whatever else.
But investigators say they've discovered Papini harmed herself to support her false statements while staying with a former boyfriend. Papini is now facing up to 25 years in prison if convicted of charges for lying to federal agents and defrauding the state's Victim Compensation Board of $30,000, which paid for visits to her therapist for treatment for anxiety and PTSD, according to the court filing. And the criminal complaint also highlights how Sherri Papini and her husband used some of the GoFundMe campaign that was supposed to help find and bring Sherri home, a fund that totaled nearly $50,000, to pay off some personal credit card expenses, though no charges have been related to that money. George.
Okay, Kaylee, thanks very much. Let's bring in the Shasta County Sheriff, Michael Johnson. Sheriff Johnson, thank you for joining us this morning. I know you've been on this case for a long time. What first made you think something was up?
Well, there was 3 stages to the investigation. And one when she went missing and the search for Sherri and deployment of resources for that. The second stage was actually trying to locate the perpetrators, the suspects that were described and the sketches that were drawn. And then the third phase is where it really started coming to light. And that was when Sherri Papini reappeared. The evidence was starting to be collected and all the facts were being vetted out. And that's when things really started taking a turn in the investigation.
So what's your theory of the case? What happened?
Well, without getting into the details of the case, it is a case of calculated deception, driven, I think, by her narcissistic behavior. And it really had an impact on this community and nationwide as far as that goes.
Well, we covered it heavily. I remember that at the time. It also brought a lot of scrutiny to your department. And you say that one of the big problems here is that resources that were diverted to from people who really needed them.
Yeah, and that is the big problem. There was a lot of time, effort, resources, money, multi-agencies coming together, putting forth this effort to try to help a victim and solve a case that was tragic. Human trafficking is a real thing, and there are victims out there that need our help. Investigations are complex, and budgets are tight. So when we put all that effort into such a case and find out that, things are not as they seemed and we've been deceived and law enforcement has been duped, it's really taxing on everybody.
And for the victim to blame two Hispanic women, this must have hit the Hispanic community and your community very hard.
It did. People in the community created anxiety immediately among a community that is pretty stable and feels safe. Well, they suddenly didn't feel safe to walk the river trails and to go out and be alone. You have a story of a typical American mom who was just abducted by what seemingly is a cartel type of human trafficking operation, which is just not true. And that disrupted a lot of things for a lot of people around here.
Do you have any idea why she did this?
I don't. Again, that's probably going to come out and unfold in the trial, and we'll figure out what those particulars are with that. But covering up a story, and again, selfish, narcissistic behavior.
Do you expect that more charges are going to be coming for either Sherri Papini or anyone else involved?
Well, I certainly wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't necessarily say I suspect it. It's going to go to the grand jury. They'll dole out the indictments that they feel is appropriate, but I certainly wouldn't be surprised because she didn't pull it off by herself and there's other people involved.
Sheriff, thanks very much for your time this morning. This is really some case. Well, hey there, G.
All right, everybody. ABC, Good Morning America. Let's chop it up. Should she be sent to jail? Fine. Pay back the victim's compensation from California. GoFundMe money. All that money sent back to the rightful owners. Should she get prison time? I say yes. The money from the GoFundMe refunded? Yes. The money from the California Victim Association? Yes. Compensation. The husband? Yes. You need to send the money back because you didn't have any business pocketing the money when it was just, 1 month after she returned or went missing. Doesn't make any sense. I'm going to go to find that article again and reread that because I want to make sure I'm repeating the right information. 1 second. Thank you all for joining me. Okay. This is about a New York Post. Let's make sure I read this correctly. Okay, the husband allegedly used $50,000 donated toward the effort to find her to pay off credit cards instead. All right, let's see. She's being sued for $49,070 donated through the Bring Sherri Home Safe GoFundMe page toward credit card, debt, and other personal expenses. It appears her husband and an unnamed ex-boyfriend were at least aware of her ruse. Okay. Papini wrote on a GoFundMe page, November 7, 2016, 5 days after he reported her missing. Your generosity, concern, and prayers are very much appreciated by the Papini family. Just 1 month later, on December 6th, he wrote a $31,000 check, $818.13, to himself from the GoFundMe account. 1 month later, let me get this right. On November 7th, 5 days after he reported her missing, he's thanking the people. Okay? In December, on the 6th, he writes a personal check over $31,000 to himself. And much of it was used to pay down a credit card debt. The rest of the donated funds were put in the couple's bank accounts and spent on personal expenses. Now, mind you, she was gone for 6 weeks. So from the 7th to the 6th, that's only 1 month. So that's 4 weeks. So she had returned, from my understanding, 3 weeks after. So when he spent the money and put it in his bank account, she was already home. This is crazy, crazy bullshit. All of them are liable. We now know that the boyfriend and the husband knew of the ruse. So the boyfriend, you were stupid to allow her to come stay with you. Whether you found out day 1, day 2, day 3, whatever, you should have told her you need to go back home. You're a married woman. This isn't going to work. You've got kids. You need to go back. She was cruel to put her kids through that. Leaving your husband and your kids, your family worrying about you. Then you pop back up with a lie. You're not fit to be a parent. You're not fit to be a wife. You're not fit to be a friend. Because people like this, you can't trust. Let's just keep it real. You're never going to be able to trust somebody with a diabolical mind as this. Because anytime they open their mouth, you're not going to know if they're telling the truth. At this point, she's proven that she is a sick person. So it doesn't matter if she told you, well, I'm going to go to Starbucks today. Then I'm going to go to Costco. No, she ain't. She ain't going no damn where. She's probably sitting at home watching TV, trying to figure up another fucking lie to scam somebody, and find a way to get some damn attention. She doesn't need to be a custodial parent of the children. The father doesn't need to be a custodial parent because you dumped that money quickly a month later into your account when you should have sent it back when your wife returned. Should have sent the money back. Because she wasn't kidnapped. Now, naturally, people were assuming she was in the public, but the public didn't know that the husband knew she hadn't been kidnapped. So now we have to ask ourselves that question. At what point did the husband find out she was staying with a boyfriend or whomever he thought she was with? What day did she tell him, hey, it's a lie? Day 1, day 2, when she returned home, week 1, week 2, week 3, what? They're all in the pot and in the thick of it. The public, they've been deceived. Law enforcement, deceived. California's Victim Compensation Board, deceived. The searchers, whoever searched for her, deceived. Her children, deceived. She and the husband do not need the children. They need an alternate caregiver. The way they found the ex-boyfriend, they checked a house that belonged to him, which belonged to her family at one time where he was staying. So that's how they put them together and searched the house, surveillance. And then they put 2 and 2 together, checked some stuff in the garbage can, ran its DNA, and that DNA matched the DNA on her clothing when she had returned from this ruse. Very sick. Very sick. The fact that she was arrested in front of her children. Now, some of you may feel like that was cruel, but let's be truthful. The police does not call you first to say, we're coming to arrest you. That's only small town, Lifetime movie stuff. Hey, Billy Bob, get ready. We're on our way. Put your good suit on. Or Susie Mae, make sure you put lipstick on because at 4:04, we're coming by to arrest you. So put your kids and your dogs up. Stay woke. It doesn't work that way. When an investigation is complete and all I's dotted, T's crossed, law officials come out with a warrant to find you. And it doesn't matter if you were flipping pancakes, reading a book, lying by your swimming pool, in Tarjay, it is what it is. I don't want to see any child harmed or traumatized by the arrest of his or her parent, siblings, but it is what it is. They do not have to get your permission to arrest you, first and foremost. 2, they don't need to call you up front to say, hey, where are you? We're on our way with a warrant. Make sure you're painted and pretty. Your kids aren't around. Pookie Ray Ray ain't around. It doesn't work like that. I understand the family's concerned that the children are possibly traumatized by seeing their mother arrested. But this woman had to have known that they were investigating her because they had to have been continuously asking her questions over the past couple of years. And common sense should tell you, if these people were coming to you recently, still asking you questions about that alleged kidnapping, you should have known they were building a case against you. You had to have known. And I won't doubt that they also talked to the ex-boyfriend who should have kindly called you and said, hey, I think you need to get prepared. They're investigating you. And me as well. 2, should the boyfriend and husband be arrested for having knowledge The boyfriend knew before anybody else because he's the one who kept her. So should the boyfriend go down for knowing that this woman was missing, her name was in the news, and he never came forward to the police to say, hey, she's with me, I got her, she's safe? Should he also be arrested? And of course, should the husband be arrested for spending the said funds from the GoFundMe? The children, how old are they? What is their mental state at this point? Probably not good. Their mother is in jail. Will she stay in jail? Will they give her a bond? I don't know. I believe the hearing might have been today. I'll bring you an update pertaining to this story when I get the said information. This is a very wicked story of a very sick and diabolical female. She's a sociopath indeed, because she doesn't know how to navigate through life. She has to make up stuff to feel important, to feel validated. And I brought you information at the beginning of this live pertaining to Munchausen syndrome. And it is said in this report that she did lie to some people saying she had a heart condition. That is a symptom of Munchausen syndrome. And it's a disease that basically they're saying is not curable. Because that's the point of a liar. That once you start lying, it's hard to stop. And a lot of people who lie end up becoming scammers, fraudulent people. They're stealing money from people, robbing people, setting people up, date scams, internet scams. You don't know people. Imagine people who were friends with her, talked to her on the phone, ate dinner with her, lunch. They thought she was a decent lady. She's a mother of children. She has parents perhaps living, brothers and sisters. Somebody in that group had to have known she's diabolical. There's always somebody that knows. It's just a matter of them saying something about it, calling her bluff. Hey, homegirl, you're sick, you need help. I caught you lying about this, this, and this. Why do you lie so much? Why are you lying? Why did Sherri Papini exact this fake kidnapping? What was so terrible about her life that she had to make up a lie about being kidnapped? She's a mother and a wife, and something was terrible inside of her for her to exact this horrible crime and get the entire community and law enforcement involved, deceive her family and children. For what reason? Because she was miserable. And frankly, that's not our problem. That's not law enforcement, your children, your husband, your family, your friends, associates. It's not their problem and it's not their burden. But you brought that to them because they knew you and liked you and cared for you. And now they have to walk around knowing you are a fraudster. And you can see her family, they're backing her, some of them, because they're perturbed at law enforcement for arresting her in front of her children. But it is what it is. She committed a crime. The investigators investigated. They went and sought a warrant, and they sought her out for the warrant. That's the law. As I said, there is no calling you ahead of time to say, hey, I'm coming to pick you up. Make sure nobody's around to see you get arrested. It doesn't work like that. The law is the law. This is my said commentary for Crime Vault, Sherri Papini. This is a double lie pertaining to a fraudster who claims to have been kidnapped and now arrested recently, and then a woman who went missing in Florida recently and later found in a septic tank, her own septic tank in her yard. I tied these two stories together because they're relevant and they coincide. You see, as I've said before, you don't know people. One story, you're listening to this woman missing and then later come forward to say she was bound, kidnapped, tortured by two Hispanic women, which were lies. And then we have a woman who was actually missing and later found dead in her own septic tank, unfortunately. I put them both in the same video because they're relevant and they're evenly yoked to show you how sick one person will go to the lengths of getting attention. And then on the other hand, there's somebody out there actually missing, actually been harmed, actually been killed. and later found, and it was not a hoax. She was actually killed by an acquaintance. Thank you for joining me. Story number 2. NBC News is the source. Handyman charged with murder after woman's body found in backyard septic tank. Florida officials believe the body is that of Cynthia Cole, who was last seen February 24th. Her handyman, Keoki Hilo Dimmick, was arrested and charged with second-degree murder. Thank you for joining me. Yes, good old Florida. First story is out of California.
Always to seek justice and to try to bring closure for victims, survivors.
Morgan County Sheriff William Snyder says the story of a missing Jensen Beach woman is one he's never seen.
It was probably as challenging a crime scene as I've ever seen. I've been doing this 40 plus years. I've never seen anything like it.
After Martin County Sheriff's Office found a body inside of a septic tank buried 4 feet underground. They strongly believe that body is 57-year-old Cynthia Cole, who had been missing for more than a week.
So we actually had to dig away to the flat top of that septic tank, then use a front-end loader to pull it back, all the while trying to preserve evidence.
The remains will be sent for an autopsy. The sheriff says video evidence led his detectives to the woman's handyman, 34-year-old Keoki Dimmick.
Very early on, he made statements that were provably false, and we were able to refute what he was saying.
Video shows the handyman leaving the victim's car along Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard in Stewart.
After first denying it, he finally does admit, yes, I drove her car.
Detectives are now asking anyone in the skyline area of Jensen Beach or MLK Jr. in Stewart to search through surveillance video and turn in anything that's suspicious.
There was nothing about her life, though, that indicated she was a chance taker. She knew the guy for years. I mean, she did nothing wrong.
All right, everybody. That's the said information. I will be playing you more audio pertaining to this very baffling story coming out of Florida. Florida officials believe the body is that of Cynthia Cole, who was last seen February 24th. Her handyman, Keoki Hilo Dimmick, was arrested on charge of second-degree murder. A body believed to be that of a missing Florida woman was found in the septic tank of her home, and her handyman was charged with murder, officials announced over the weekend. Cynthia Cole, 57, was last seen February 24th at the Jammin' Jensen event downtown Jensen Beach, according to the Martin County Sheriff's Office. A body believed to be hers was found inside the septic tank of her Jensen Beach home late Friday evening into Saturday morning by Martin County Sheriff's detectives, the agency said in a news release. Authorities excavated Cole's backyard for hours and found the body submerged in the contents of the tank, about 4 feet underground, according to the release. Keoki Hilo Dimmick, 44, a handyman who worked for Cole, was located by detectives shortly afterward and arrested on a charge of second-degree murder. Martin County Sheriff William Snyder told NBC News affiliate WPTV of West Palm Beach that investigators found Cole's car on Friday within walking distance from Dimmick's home. Further surveillance footage showed him walking away from Cole's car the night she vanished. When detectives looked at Cole's home over the weekend, one of them happened to look down and noticed the cover to the septic tank didn't look right, prompting the search into the tank, the sheriff said. A motive is not immediately clear in the case. I've been doing this 40 years plus. I've never seen anything like it, Snyder said. Positive identification of the body by the medical examiner's office is expected shortly, but authorities have every reason to believe it is that of Ms. Cole. Elements of the case remain under investigation, the sheriff's office said. Dimmick remains in custody with his first court appearance slated for Monday, the sheriff's office told NBC News. The autopsy is also scheduled for Monday. Online records for the case and lawyer information for Dimich were not immediately available. NBCnews.com is the source. This is a Caucasian female who was out with her friends having a great time, returned home, and it is believed that this man, who was an African-American man that she's known for some time, worked for her, did odd jobs, lied in wait, and harmed her. They're not giving much information from the investigation, but I will play audio where you can hear law officials' take on this said story. Trying to pull this story. Hold on one second. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and pull up another story pertaining to her. NewYorkPost.com, source number 2. Friends mourn Cynthia Cole, missing woman found dead in septic tank. Friends and neighbors of a missing Florida woman found dead in a septic tank are struggling to find answers in her gruesome slaying, saying she didn't deserve to be buried in her backyard. A body believed to be Cynthia Cole, 57, was discovered submerged early Saturday in the backyard of her Jensen Beach home. Police said her handyman of several years, Keoki Hilo Dimich, 34, likely killed the missing mom before disposing of her body in the cesspool. Accusations that he enraged her friends and neighbors, WPBF reported. She was murdered and put in the septic tank, neighbor Lisa Steiger tearfully told the station. Like, who does that to somebody? It's just not fair. Cole, also known as Cindy, was last seen with friends at a Jammin' Jensen Art Festival in Jensen Beach on February 24th. One of her neighbors and close friends, Barbara Deal, went with her and said nothing unusual happened during the outing. In this said article, you will see a picture of Cynthia Cole, and it is believed that she was found dead early March 5th, 2022, in a septic tank belonging to her property. She had a fun night and was ready to go home and said goodbye, and we never knew that we'd never see her again, Deal said. Cole, a devout Christian, loved being outdoors, especially at the beach, and enjoyed traveling and photography, friends told WPBF. They were dumbfounded as to why anyone would hurt her. Cindy was a beautiful person, Steiger continued before noting the excavated site in Cole's backyard. It breaks my heart, and I litter it out of my kitchen window. That's what I see, is her house. So every day I drive by, that is what I'm going to see. In the said commentary, you will see a picture of the African-American male who is believed to be the suspect in this grisly crime. Oh, mercy. Dimich of Stewart was working on renovations at Cole's house, according to the Martin County Sheriff's Office. A medical examiner must identify the body, but detectives have every reason to be believed it's Cole, says the sheriff Saturday. Security footage showed Dimich getting out of Cole's car near his home on the same night she vanished, Sheriff William Snyder told WPBF. Deputies then went back to Cole's home after Dimich was arrested Friday for second-degree murder and found the top layer of soil disturbed above the septic tank. A body was found inside, Snyder said. I've been doing this 40-plus years. I've never seen anything like it, Snyder said. A message seeking additional comment from the sheriff's office was not immediately returned early Monday. Deal, meanwhile, said Cole was an affable woman who impressed everyone she met. Cindy was a joy to be around, Deal said. She had a lot of friends. Everybody loved Cindy. She was kind to everyone in all walks of life. She was a special person. She didn't deserve it. Nobody deserves it. I'm going to miss her. I miss her already. Another friend, Victoria Boyd, said she'll try her best not to think of how investigators discovered Cole's body. This is not how we want to think of Cynthia, Boyd told WPEC. She is not buried in some god-awful grave. New York Post is the source. Prayers to the family of Miss Cynthia Cole and to her child or children who are left behind to grieve their mother. I will now bring you commentary pertaining to this very wicked story out of the state of Florida. Thank you for joining me. This is Everyday Shenanigans. Hold on one second, you guys. Lot of reading, lot of reading. Okay. Court TV is the source pertaining to 57-year-old Miss Cynthia Cole. If you need verification, please go into the YouTube queue and also my community page. Thank you for joining me. This is a 17-minute audio. Sorry about that.
Goes missing. They find her, and she's discovered in her backyard in her own septic tank. This is really a tragic story on many different levels, involves a lot of challenges. WPTV, our great affiliate down in Florida, John Shainman, reporter, has more details for us tonight as we try to unravel what happened.
Lisa Steiger places a bouquet in front of a sign she left by her neighbor's garage off Skyline Drive in Jensen Beach.
Because I wanted to show my presence of, how much she meant to us in the neighborhood.
The body of that neighbor, 57-year-old Cynthia Cole, was found by investigators in her septic tank Saturday. She'd been missing since February 24th.
She would have loved the flowers and the butterflies. That's how she was. She was just very earthly, down to earth.
A handyman who did yard work for Cole, 34-year-old Keoki Demich, was arrested and charged with her murder.
By his own admission and by witness testimony and other information we have, he was at the house. And based on cumulative evidence, it does appear that she was probably killed soon after getting home.
The sheriff says although Demich was listed as a sex offender in Washington state from an arrest as a teen, he didn't have that designation in Florida because of a change in the law and had been friendly with the victim for years.
He was not on our radar.
An autopsy is yet to be completed, but Cole suffered a number of trauma injuries.
They had a monster machine digging that hole.
Detectives who had stopped by the home last Friday noticed a sewer pipe in the backyard that had a number of screws loose from the cover. An initial check spotted the body, and that led to the weekend excavation.
It just breaks my heart what happened to her. And it's just disrespectful, and I can't believe that somebody would harm her in the way that they did.
Demich is being held in jail tonight on a $750,000 bond. In Martin County, John Shainman, WPTV, News Channel 5.
A lot of questions tonight on this one. Let's bring in a special guest joining us now by phone in Martin County, Florida, is the sheriff from Martin County, William Snyder. Sheriff, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Yes, sir. You're welcome.
Let's begin here. What led you to the septic tank? How did investigators end up in the backyard there?
Well, it was our second time going to the house. And, initially it was a missing person call. It was an adult. We didn't see anything suspicious at the home, other than the fact that some things that she would normally have taken with her wallet, credit cards, were still there. So we were very suspicious. On the second time going back, one of my detectives was extremely alert, looked down at the cover of the septic tank. It's big enough to put a body in it. And he noticed that the bolts on that, what we call a riser here in South Florida, looked like the dirt had been moved away from the bolts. And he just kneeled down and bolted it, pulled that cover off, and unfortunately discovered her body in the septic tank.
All right, let's talk about processing that scene and trying to get her body out. What are some of the challenges? I can't imagine. Have you ever been to a scene like this before?
No, I'm in about my 45th year doing that. I was a Miami cop in Dade County for 20 years. And none of us in our sheriff's office had ever seen it. We'd never heard of it. And so it really was a Herculean task. We had an open septic tank, human remains, and we had to get heavy equipment. We had to actually take the fence apart to get back there, take out trees, hedges, and then excavate as much as we could with the heavy equipment and the backhoe, and then we had to dig the rest by hand, and then carefully pull that cement cover. I don't know, say it's 4x6, very heavy, pulled it away, not letting it slam back down into the water and destroy the physical evidence that we were hoping to get from the body. And then in raw sewage, get equipment in there to get the body out, all the while trying to preserve evidence and keep my detectives from falling into that raw sewage. We actually had to tie ropes around their waist. And it was a Herculean task.
Amazing. Now, what led you from investigating the septic tank and discovering her body to then tracking down this handyman?
Well, the handyman, Keoki Demich, was on our radar really almost from the day we got the missing person report, because he was known to go over there. She was a single female. He had been seen over the years coming and going and helping her. And so we went to talk to him. A homicide or a missing person investigation, thinking it might be a homicide, you have to eliminate everybody who would have had contact with the victim. And when we interviewed him to eliminate him from suspicion, it was clear, really from the very beginning, that he was hiding something. And so I don't think you have time on the show to get into all the nuances of it, but he was lying from the very beginning. It was easy to see that he was lying. So we conducted around-the-clock surveillance and ultimately put him at the scene and then driving away with her car.
So, again, amazing work by you all, that so quickly you can recognize someone is being deceptive and is on your radar. Have you been able to put together a timeline of when all this happened and perhaps what motivated it?
Well, that's two big questions. The timeline really is not that complex. She was at an event in downtown Jensen Beach here in Martin County, a kind of a middle-class neighborhood. She was with some friends, not drinking, nothing going on unusual, and she went home. Well, over the next, I don't have the report in front of me, 5 or 6 days, they never heard from her again. She failed to make some appointments. And so the timeline looked like, well, it looks like now with follow-up and evidence from the cell phones and video camera surveillances we've got from cooperating witnesses, neighborhood, it looks like she went from the restaurant to home. He was already there. He puts himself there. He admits that he was there. We have evidence that he drove the car away. He admits driving the car away. So the timeline is pretty tight. Looks like she gets home at 7:30, and he's gone in her car by 8 o'clock.
And the why of it, because you mentioned that he had been there for years. Why at this moment do you believe that he would take her life?
Look, one of the hardest things for us as investigators is always to determine motive. Sometimes motive is easy. There's missing money, there's ransacking, there's obvious signs of a sexual battery. In this case, we can't tell if anything's missing from the house. She can't tell us. He's not cooperating. Our sense is, and I want to be careful because some of this is not ready to be released yet, but there is some significant indicators that there was probably a sexual battery and most likely also a robbery. What triggers him that night to go to her house, takes an Uber or a Lyft and goes there, waits for her, ambushes her in the house. Why that day, why that night, why that time? We may never know. He's not telling us.
And finally, Sheriff, and we really appreciate your time tonight. I know it's been a long, long day for you guys, and it's been a lot of work in putting this case together so well. As you look at this defendant now, this handyman, Demich, does he have any history?
He has almost no history. He was arrested for a burglary as a juvenile. He became a registered sex offender as a result of that. He watched some pornography at the victim's home and in the state, in Washington State, where he was from, that qualified him as an offender. He was not qualified as an offender here in Florida. So, yeah, his criminal past is negligible. He was friendly with the victim. She trusted him. Sometimes things are just inexplicable, and there are some questions we can't answer, and maybe we'll never answer.
Well, Sheriff William Schneider down in Martin County, Florida, again, thank you for your time tonight and great work by your team down there in solving this case and solving it so quickly. We appreciate it.
Well, you're very welcome. Y'all have a great evening.
Okay, let's bring in our investigators joining us tonight. In Atlanta, Georgia, former special agent in charge at the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, Trebor Randall, and in Salt Lake City, Utah, private investigator Jason Jensen, who is joining us tonight in lieu of celebrating his own birthday. So happy birthday from everyone, Jason. We appreciate you coming on tonight. Let's get to work here, though. This scene, Jason, the sheriff seemed to indicate there might be some evidence of a sexual battery and robbery here. We know what that scene was like, where the victim was recovered, Cynthia Cole. Your thoughts about what type of evidence that they may have or may need to prove that part of the case?
Well, it sounds like they found a mostly intact cadaver in the septic tank. So the ME is going to have a lot to work with to either determine that there was blunt force involved in subduing her, or maybe she was strangled. But there's a lot here that it's amazing that they solved this case so quickly, because with the evidence of damage leaving the scene in the Jeep, it's entirely possible they could have assumed the worst, that he took the victim away from the home and not even explore the backyard the way they did. So it's a good thing that this deputy had a keen eye and noticed such a little detail, like the dirt swept away from the screws of the manhole cover, because otherwise they could have overlooked this tremendous tip.
It's unbelievable. Trebor, like that moment, I'm thinking this is like a scene from one of these cop shows that I've been reared on for years, where the lead character is the only one who can spot this little tiny thing. And it wasn't a little tiny thing. There was some dirt that was brushed off of the bolts from the lid to this riser that connected to the septic tank. To me, that is absolutely amazing that the deputy spotted that and put two and two together so quickly.
Absolutely. And happy birthday, by the way, Jason, as well. But I mean, I love it. We call this good old-fashioned cop work, investigative work. And you all call it a little detail. I call it a big detail. We look for things like that. Our forensic folks, that's what they're trained to do. An area of dirt that's been disturbed that ordinarily, unless somebody's been working on your septic tank, that dust or that dirt would not have been moved away necessarily, right? And I can recall many scenes that we've had like this where it appeared to be something, like you said, out of a movie, where we've had a body that's been put down into a well. We've had a body that's been put in a septic tank in different places, in a landfill, and it's like finding a needle in a haystack. But I really love the fact that there was an astute detective that said, hey, this looks unusual, because when you're looking for someone or you're looking for evidence of a crime, you don't look past anything. Also, I just love the way they work. They used the big tools, and they went down to their hands. By them dealing with a septic tank and waste and all, the only thing that's missing that we would have done would have been the Tyvek suits. I definitely want them to be careful. We've learned from our mistakes with that, digging around in landfills, and then, investigators are exposed to different elements, and it's not unusual for somebody to catch a rash and start reaching the next day. But I love the work here. We've done this several times, and it's very tedious, as the sheriff mentioned. You have to be really careful when you get all the heavy stuff out of the way and you get down to the actual body or the main evidence. And some cases, we're using toothbrushes if we're unearthing someone in dirt. But you have to be very careful to preserve all that evidence as a leadership. But great work for those guys who broke that.
It absolutely was. Jason Jensen, the other part of this investigation that the sheriff told us about, which was, well, we knew this handyman was hanging around, so we talked to him. And again, it's that gut feeling when you talk to someone, they listen, wait a minute, something's going on with this guy. And then they started the surveillance.
Exactly. And I think what led them to that is the fact that Cindy had friends, her neighbor, in fact. And so the neighbor was aware that Cindy had work being done to her home. So the question is, maybe the handyman saw something or is the work unfinished? That would be a tremendous lead. It's like, why did you stop working? When's the last time you saw Cindy? So I'm sure it started there and got broader from there.
And Shabor, the other tragedy here is you have Cynthia Cole. She's living by herself. She needs stuff fixed around the house. And she's got some, this wasn't like the first time you'd ever met her. And you would think probably through the years there was a level of trust that was built between him and her, and to have that trust broken, and for this to happen, to me, is the other part of this story and this tragedy.
You're right, Vinny. One of the first things that I tell women, especially women who live alone, if they're going to be looking for to hire, whether it's a handyman, a contractor for services, someone that's going to be around your home and you live alone, that person is going to know that. They're going to know that you don't have a husband around, or a roommate for that matter, people living in the house with you. He knew she lived alone, and we know that he did have somewhat of a past. So you always want to be very careful and check a background. Go through the services that do provide background checks for these individuals that are going to come into your home. It sounds like she didn't have any reason not to trust him. He had been around. I'm very concerned about the fact that he was registered in another state, even though it didn't meet the criteria for Florida. It tells me that he has a past. As the sheriff mentioned, we always want to try to get to the why. Sometimes that's not evident, and if they're not cooperating, we may not get that. But the first thing when I heard that he was a sex offender, one thing I know about someone who exhibits sexually deviant behavior is that they don't ever get past that. It's going to rear its ugly head at some point. And we don't know if he had made advances towards her, they were rejected. That's the first thing that my mind went to. We've seen this over and over where that person who is a sex offender has some type of history in the past, has been watching this person, maybe fantasizing about her, is just decided to make that advancement, and she rejects him, and the next thing you know, we're working a homicide investigation. The fact that he takes the car and steals some items, I think that was more after the fact.
Really sad. We're going to continue to track this case because now it looks like it'll be moving towards a trial, and we'll keep you up to date with all the latest. When we come back, Trebor, Jason staying with us. We're going to talk about...
All right. Court TV source for that information is in the YouTube queue and also posted to my community board. I'm going to go ahead and get started because I have another live number 2 coming up after this one. Let's start with the obvious. The woman went missing, later found in her own septic tank. A African-American male is believed to be the suspect. He was also seen on surveillance leaving her home. The car, used her car. The car was found near his home. He took an Uber. Did she have a personal relationship with the suspect? And when I mean personal, I mean dating, sexual, a fling. Could it be he liked her? She did not adhere to the advances, so he doubled back, lied in wait in her home. So that means he had to have broken into the house, because how did he get in? They don't state. If he knocked at the door, sat outside and waited, knocked on the door, or broke in through a window door, whichsoever. But I am curious to know if perhaps these two ever dated or messed around. Now, she's old enough to be his mother, but it doesn't mean that a woman is not a woman and he's not a man. Let's stay woke. Why would he do this crime? Why would he kill her? They do believe that sexual assault may have taken place, but then in this instance that they say they didn't see anything to suspect robbery, then he goes and says that he believes that some things were taken. So what is the truth? Did he take some things or he didn't? Was that just, as they said, an afterthought? After having access to the house, no one's around, he's killed her, boom. I'll go ahead and take me a few things. Why did he do it? He has an older charge from a juvenile back in Washington State. Those charges does not adhere to what is considered a sexual predator in the state of Florida, so he didn't have to register in the state of Florida. And mind you, all records pertaining to children are sealed. Any crime acts they commit are sealed by the given state. But it's just so sad that these two had a rapport with one another. She knew him. They don't say how many years that she's known him, but nonetheless, that has been proven in this commentary that they knew of each other. They had a rapport that appeared to be decent, and that out of the blue, she goes missing, and they have trailed him to her house by Uber, Lyft, and leaving the scene in her car and abandoning her car near his home. So this man was brazen enough to show up at her house in an Uber share ride, not thinking that neighbors have doorbell cameras, surveillance cameras. A lot of people have doorbell cameras because of crime, and they saw him in the area. She also went out that evening with friends, had a good time, was in good spirits. So what we have to ask ourselves, when was the last time the two communicated? Did they have each other's telephone numbers? Possibly they did, considering he's a handy man. Like I said, did they have a sexual relationship, flirted, dated, something? Did he ever come on to her? If he did, when was the last time he said something out of the way to her? When was the last time they communicated? When was the last time he was at the house? Had he been watching her, stalking her? Why did he take an Uber to the house? Did he know she was going to be home or not at home? Did she tell him she was going to be at home? Did he ask, could he come see her? Did she tell him to come see her? See, there's 1,000 questions you can ask. Because one, they do, or did, know of each other. You're welcome, Crystal. What happened? Why did this man go to her house that night? Was he romantically interested in her? It is believed that she was assaulted. So why would he do that? Why do you need to sexually assault someone and then kill them? Either or. Violating a person's personal space is a crime. Taking someone's life is a crime. Why did he do it? Younger man who had his whole life ahead of him. Why would he risk his freedom to kill this lady that he knew? Even if she was a stranger, still wrong. What did she do to you for you to feel the need to take her life? Did she not adhere to your advances, Mr. whomever you are? And you lost control. Has he committed these crimes thereafter and not been caught? Because as I said, he has an old record from juvenile, which would be sealed from the state of Washington. But has he exacted these types of crimes elsewhere in the United States? Because Washington is a mighty long way from the state of Florida. So you've had to stop at different ports to get to Florida. How did he get to Florida? When did he move to Florida? How long was he living in Florida? Does he have a full-time, part-time employment in Florida? Obviously, he didn't have a car because he Ubered or took a Lyft. So why doesn't he have an automobile? How long has he been in the general area? How did she meet him? Through a friend, acquaintance? What? So that means other people knew him for her to meet him as a handyman. Has he made advances to other women in the general area or in the United States? Has he killed before? 1,000 questions. 1,000 questions. Because when you're dealing with a predator, you have to ask yourself, which is the obvious, which has been mentioned in this commentary, that perhaps he has been a busy bee before, but did not get caught. Who's to say that he has not been sexually assaulting other women, but he didn't get caught? Because we know that most sadists will eventually turn into killers as not to be apprehended by law officials. So what starts off as 1, 2, 3 rapes leads to serial rapist / murderer. I've been talked to, brought into an interrogation room, asked what was I doing in this area. Hey, I was seen in this area. That will never happen again. if they let me out of this room. The next time I walk out of here and I decide to climb through a window, break in a house, snatch a lady up, they ain't going to catch me, because she's not going to be around to make a police report that I raped her. This is a very tragic story. Miss Cole is a mother. I do not know how many children she has, but prayers to her family, her children. This is devastating because, as I've said many times in my commentary, that we are all human. We all make mistakes. We all meet and greet people. We all take chances with people. And it doesn't matter if you've known a person all of 1 day, 2 days, 12 months. Eventually, you will let your guard down and go somewhere alone with the person. You will invite a person into your home. You will go into that person's home. And you do not know at that moment that the person will turn on you. We have people coming into our homes to fix the Wi-Fi, the cable, plumbing, electrical, fix a window, blah, blah, blah. And there you are as a female standing alone in your home. I mean, I had someone in here recently, 2 men trying to decide what to do with this new air conditioning unit that they're trying to work on. Anything could have happened. And that's the thing. You're thinking to yourself, well, they wouldn't be stupid enough to do something right here, would they? But that's the point. You don't know them. Once the door is closed, all bets are off. You have no idea once the door is closed what someone will do to you, whether you know them or not. Many people have been bamboozled and hoodwinked by people that they knew and knew of and knew well. Women and men are murdered by their spouses and lovers every day. And they've known these people for years and possibly saw the signs that they were unwrapped, unglued, mad hatters, but they stayed anyway. But then that fateful day, they were snuffed out. And then you have a case like this. An acquaintance that does handiwork who later decides to go to the home, lie in wait for the victim, and take her life. For what reason? It doesn't matter because it's principle. She was a human being. And the way he discarded her, it took time. 4 feet in, that's work. Sewer system. That means you put her down where waste is. Stay woke. Why go through the lengths of doing that? Because it's clue number 1. They're going to know it was me because I know her. And everybody knows that when a body is discarded off of a property, it's usually somebody that knows the victim, because a stranger is not going to kill the person and then carry them off of the property. Very rare that a stranger would do this, because if I'm a stranger to the person, then nobody knows that I know him or her. So they won't come looking for me. Why would they look for me if no one knows of me? My name's never been mentioned that I know of. I'm just a stalker. I'll kill that person right there and leave them in their home. But when people know the victim, they tend to take the body off the property as to make it appear that it was a stranger. But that's the thing about being a killer that's dumb. It doesn't make sense. Random killings, the killer has no reason to discard the body outside of the area where they killed the person. Such as if I go in the store, rob the convenience store, why would I take the person from behind the counter and dump them somewhere outside of the store, down the street, in a river? For what? If nobody knows me, they don't know me. It's too much work. Usually only people who know the victim discard the body elsewhere. That's why he took her in the septic tank. He would let the people search. But see, someone said, what made them look there? Someone had a keen eye. They were looking on the property, went back, as the sheriff says, second round, and saw bolts loose. And one thing begat another. Unscrew the bolt. There lies the body of Miss Cole. Very sick crime, and sick to dispose her in a septic tank, knowing somebody has to crawl in there and pull her out So now you're risking contamination. Also potential evidence of the body, on the body, in the body with waste. Very gruesome, daunting job to go in and pull her out, to carry her out of there, to place her on a gurney, then to the hospital. All of that disgusting, disgusting work exacted by a sadist that knew the victim. The victim knew him. So what I asked today is, what is the personal relationship between the two? Could it have been he fancied her? She took a liking to him. One thing led to another. But she wasn't interested again or anymore. Or it's just he liked her. He'd been trying to get with her. She told him no. And on that fateful evening, he said, I'm going to get her. Nobody turns me down. What was it? This is a horrible crime. So my message to all of you in the chat and those listening is to be careful of your surroundings. Be careful of where you live and your neighbors and your friends and your acquaintances. That when you see signs of a person making sexual advances, romantic gestures that you're not interested in, you might want to sever your ties. And naturally, this could tip someone off the deep end, but that goes to being aware of your surroundings. Keeping all doors locked, windows locked, security system, cameras inside, cameras outside. We live in an age of modern technology. It is probably best that each of us invest in having security cameras, because you don't know people. You think you know people, but you don't. And this is a prime example of someone thinking they knew a handyman, but she did not. And she is now no longer alive. And now gone for people to have to grieve her. Senselessly, unexpected, heinous, demented crime that didn't have to happen. As I said, heed the signs, the warnings that someone is not well. They're saying things you don't like. You do not have to play nice. You don't have to cuss them out, act ignorant, because you do not want them flipping out at that moment. But kindly say, well, no, thank you. I have a friend. Be very diplomatic and try to get that person out of your peripheral if you are alone. But see, the flip side of that is the person could assault you right there on the spot once you deny them. So what are your options at that point? That means you've got to fight. You've got to fight. See, that's the thing about the human mind. Perhaps she never had a clue that he was interested. Maybe she did, maybe she didn't. We don't know, because she's not here and he's not cooperating. So now we have to pray that the truth will be revealed into what happened on that fateful evening. But the scary part is she's no longer here. He violated her and she's no longer here. And no matter what was said or done, how long this issue or issues could have been going on, she's not here to tell. And he's not talking. And this could have been a one-time thing where he approached her. She said no. He doubled back. Flip side, she could have had him in the house, outside on the lawn, anything. He made advances. She said no. And he assaulted her right there on the spot. See, you don't know people. And that's the scary part, is if there is no warning that the person is getting ready to physically assault you from you saying, no, thank you. You're going to have to fight. So I advise all women, sadly to say, even in your own home, with strangers coming into your house to do any type of work, you need to have mace on your wrist, in your pocket, your bosom, just in case. But that's the thing. Who's going to think like that? Oh, I've got the repairman coming. Let me go grab the mace. Let me put the mace around my neck. Nobody's going to think of that at that time, because most people don't think of grabbing mace or a weapon inside of their home. That's the farthest thing that you're thinking about, because you're trying to take care of your business with this said person. So you're not thinking about grabbing mace or a weapon or a knife, a gun, just to have the cable guy come check the cable, or the phone's not been working, or you're getting your Wi-Fi done or upgraded. You're not thinking, yeah, I better go get my mace, I better go get my knife, just in case he tries to make a pass or just jumps me, grabs me. Who's thinking like that? But as I've said to women, if you live alone and or known to be alone at the time, you coming home with packages, parcels, whatsoever, never let a person carry your parcels inside of the door. If someone offers to help, you let them know that you would prefer that they just sit them at the door. If they say, well, can I come in? I'll take them in. No, thank you. I've got a dog. I've got a brother up, or make an excuse. They don't know you. You can lie. So that's the thing about women. A lot of us don't like lying, or not quick on our feet to lie. Lying can save your life. Oh, my husband's asleep. My brother's asleep. My brother's studying. Whatever. My kid's up. That means there's a witness. They don't want witnesses if they are up to no good. So if anyone ever offers you help in carrying something up the stairs, down the stairs, up to the door, just kindly say no, or you can sit them right here near the door. I'll get them. I've got some help inside. The boys can come out and pick up the bags. He doesn't have to know the truth that there are no boys, no husband, no boyfriend, no brother. Make up something. Make up something, because it just may save your life. Prayers for this lady, because this is terrible. And her friends are mourning her. And she seemed to be a very kind person from what has been said about her in the commentary. And she is now no longer alive over some foolishness. We have too much crime going on in America right now. And really, there's just no way to safeguard the human mind. You can lock all the doors, have a security system, have things connected to your phone, but there may be a time when you're out somewhere where your cameras and all of that won't save you, won't help you, because you don't know the mind of another individual. You just have to pray that you will not walk in the path of a demented spirit. So please be aware of your surroundings when you're out shopping, going around your daily events, going places alone, traveling down the highway, going to hotels by yourself, going to businesses yourself, going to lounges, clubs, bars. It's all the same. Grocery stores alone. Decide you want ice cream late. You still need to be aware of your surroundings. There's always somebody out watching, lurking. Always somebody out. Always somebody sick. I had an incident this weekend where my car was vandalized. So you don't know what was the intention of the person trying to get in my car. Was it personal? They thought something was in there. What's the reason? See, you don't know. So you have to be very careful out here, because we have some very sick people out here. This was a double live. The first was a crime vault, true crime pertaining to Sherri Papini, who is now in jail on said fraudulent charges of faking a kidnapping. And the second story is pertaining to a woman who was found dead in her own septic tank down in Florida, Miss Cynthia Cole. I want to thank you all for joining me. If you'd like to donate to the channel, $Beganji129 Cash App. All super chats welcome during the live. I will be back with a second live pertaining to the Cal City Boys and the gag order, and a comprehensive dive into the court proceedings and what is to be expected in court and down the road. Thank you, new subs, old subs, guests, and those visiting. Thank you, mods, for modding this evening. You all stay safe. When I get more information pertaining to Ms. Cole's storyline, and if this suspect will decide to speak or talk or give any information pertaining to the crime, I will give you an update. I will post it to my community board, and I also will give you an update to my crime vault story pertaining to Sherri Papini, who is now in jail for faking a 2016 kidnapping that she orchestrated. And also the ex-boyfriend had knowledge, and also the husband thereafter. Thank you all so much for joining me. God bless all of you. Please stay safe. Thank you, Marilyn. God is good. Queen took care of everything. God made a way for me to get everything repaired to the car. But I will be keeping a watchful eye out of my surroundings and where I go. That way I know how to handle the situation if anything else further arises pertaining to my vehicle. But that's the point. You don't know people. You don't know the motives of people. You don't know. That's why you have to be aware of your surroundings. Sometimes it means also changing up the routine of the things that you do. God bless all of you. This is Everyday Shenanigans. Thank you.